Who are the essential ads in fantasy baseball and who is it time to cut bait on? We'll go through all of that in this week's episode of the Rotoworld Fantasy Baseball Ad Drop. The player I want you to add this week is Los Angeles Angels shortstop Zach Neto, who's rostered in just 26% of Yahoo leagues. Over the last 2 weeks, Neto is 12 for 39, which is a .308 batting average with 3 home runs, 8 RBIs, and 1 steal. Now that gives him 10 home runs and 9 steals on the season and is putting him on a pretty quiet 2020 pace. I will admit I've been big on Neto since a couple of my preseason articles where he popped for me based on his barrel rate and batted ball quality. However, I do think that it's been warranted. He does hit the ball hard with a 9.4% barrel rate on the season and will pull it in the air enough to leave the yard since his fly ball exit velocities are in the 83rd percentile in Major League Baseball. He can be a little bit over-aggressive at times, which causes him to chase pitches outside of the zone, which does lead to some batting average inconsistencies, but I think that he is the true talent to be a .260 hitter. And as he learns to kind of modify that aggression, and that will make him even more fantasy viable, especially when you add in that solid speed on an Angels team that is running very aggressively right now. One of the biggest knocks on Neto is that he was hitting 9th to start the year on this Angels team. And while I do think that he will eventually move up to the top of the order once the trade deadline passes and they trade away some of these players, he has moved up to 6th right now, which is helping his RBI and runs totals. And again, considering he's on a 2020 pace, when you up the RBI and the runs, Neto is a really solid corner or middle infield player in really all leagues. I think he can be rostered in 12-team leagues and should definitely be rostered in 15-team leagues. I think it's really hard to find that type of 2020 upside, so I'd be adding Neto in all formats right now. The player I want you to hold is Kansas City Royals third baseman Maikel Garcia, who's rostered in 83% of Yahoo leagues. Now, the Maikel Garcia hive has been a little quiet of late as he's hit just 168 in June with no home runs. But that has come with 17 runs scored and 6 steals, so he's not exactly giving you nothing. The poor average and the lack of power is a little bit concerning, and he has been dropped in a fair number of leagues, but here's why I think that you need to be holding on to Garcia in your fantasy leagues. For starters, his plate discipline remains strong. In this poor stretch in June, he has a nearly 10% walk rate and a 15% strikeout rate. So he is still making a lot of contact. That contact ability is elite in terms of its percentile rate within the MLB. And he continues to hit at the top of a strong Royals lineup, so they still have confidence in him despite these struggles. One concern is that the fly ball rate has gone up 10% in June, and that's caused his line drive rate to plummet. Even though we knew Garcia could hit the ball hard and could hit more home runs coming into this year, we didn't really want to see him lift the ball too much. His fly ball rate in June is a modest 35%, so he's not really selling out for power, but we'd like to see him go back to spraying line drives all across the field, which will help him raise his batting average rather than trying to lift the ball too much. Cold stretches will happen for young hitters as the so-called book on them gets out and pitchers start pitching them differently. So I think Garcia can bounce back. I don't think that he's going to be more than a 10 or 12 home run hitter, but that's okay. I just want him to get back to spraying line drives all over the field. We can see that the run totals are there and the stolen bases are there. So if the batting average comes up as it should, given his contact ability, Garcia is still going to be a really solid player for you as a corner infield option. And the Royals have started playing him more at second base, which means he could get second base eligibility as well. So a middle infield, corner infield option that can be moved around is really valuable for you in a lot of fantasy formats. So you should be holding on to Garcia as he gets that eligibility. Before I tell you which player I want you to drop, I want you to pause this video, comment below, ask me any fantasy baseball questions you have, and I'll get to those as the week goes on. Could be waiver wire questions, trade questions, anything at all. Just hit me up in the comments, and I'll get to those as the week goes on. Now, the player I want you to drop is Minnesota Twins catcher Ryan Jeffers, who's still rostered in 55% of Yahoo leagues. Now, Jeffers was a great story at the start of the season. He was crushing the ball and catching about 75 or 80% of the games for the Twins, and kind of broken free of that committee. Yet since May 1st, he's hitting just 197. Now, that has come with 8 home runs over that 39-game stretch, but coming into the year, Jeffers profiled as a power-first catcher who'd hit the ball hard but have some slight batting average risk and be in a little bit of a committee. And may have believed at the start of the season that he had evolved beyond that, but he's really kind of settled back into the player we thought he was coming into this year. He's striking out just 24% of the time since May 1st, which is nice. And that 12% barrel rate is keeping people around, but his swing decisions have gotten significantly worse, and his out-of-zone swing decisions in particular have been around the 20th percentile in baseball since the middle of May. So that has really led to some poor contact, because even though he's still making contact, he's making contact on pitches he can't really do damage on, which has led to that poor batting average. As a result, the Twins have started to play Christian Vasquez a lot more behind the plate, and so Jeffers has kind of fallen back into a little bit more of a committee and not really taken a stranglehold of that job. So Jeffers looks like a strong power hitter who's going to hit for a low or modest batting average and is going to split time behind the plate, and that really doesn't separate him from a lot of catchers that are out there. Now, in two catcher leagues, I can certainly see holding on to Jeffers. But in one catcher leagues, I'd probably rather take a shot on somebody like Ben Rice or Freddie Fermin, who are playing a little bit more and are producing more across the board. So I really don't think that Jeffers needs to be rostered in 55% of leagues right now. A bonus stash for those of you who stuck around late into this video. I want you to stash Milwaukee Brewers outfielder Garrett Mitchell, who's rostered in just 3% of Yahoo leagues. Now, usually in this section, we cover a prospect who's coming up who needs to be stashed. And Mitchell is kind of part of that, and also an injured player making his return from the IL. He's a 25-year-old who's played in just 47 MLB games, but he was set to be the Brewers' starting center fielder before fracturing his hand at the start of the season. Now he's working his way back, and I think the Brewers are going to put him back into that starting center field spot. I know they've gotten good production from Sal Frelick and Blake Perkins, but they really did want Mitchell in the spot, and I think they're going to give him back that role and can probably move Frelick back to that utility role he was set to take on at the start of the year. In 9 games on his AAA and his rehab assignment so far, Mitchell is hitting .270 with 3 homers and 3 steals, and he's showcasing the type of all-around ability that makes him a pretty solid fantasy target, especially when playing his home games in a hitter-friendly park in Milwaukee. He has shown some swing and miss issues in MLB in the past, which could mean that his batting average is going to be below that .270, .280 mark that he keeps putting up in AAA. However, I think the power and speed are intriguing. I think the playing time will be there enough for him to put up solid counting stats in a good Brewers lineup. And so I'd really take a gamble on him rather than stashing some hitting prospects who we don't know when they're going to come up and have no MLB experience to their name. I would expect Mitchell to be up in the next week or so and slotted right into that strong Brewers lineup. And so I think he could be a really solid asset, especially in 15-team leagues for the rest of the season. Though if you're looking good in 12-team leagues and you have a spot to make a stash, I really would be stashing Mitchell right now. So to recap this week, my ad was Angels shortstop Zach Neto. My hold was Royals third baseman Maikel Garcia. My drop was Twins catcher Ryan Jeffers. And my stash is Brewers outfielder Garrett Mitchell. And I'll be back next week for more fantasy baseball ad drop hold.